So let me tell you a bit about my experience using the Grimm UC1 audio interface. I've purchased one, I think, about 3 months ago, and that decision was made quite intuitively. I plan to do a lot of scientific testing, if you will, like A to B comparison, blind listening tests, comparing the UC1 to my existing converter setup. And eventually I did, and the test sort of confirmed what I thought was happening. But I noticed straight away when connecting the device that everything sort of cleaned up in the studio. And that's quite a claim to make, so let me elaborate on how that can be. Obviously this is also a monitoring controller, so in my case the most important parts of the audio run through this box. So there's a mastering A to D and D to A loop, so I'm doing analog processing on my masters and also capturing my mixes done in analog via this converter. So that makes it the final step of the creative chain. But then it's also the monitoring path. So this is also the D to A converter to the speakers I'm using, to the headphone I'm using, and also the send to the digital speakers I'm using. And those are made by the same manufacturer, so it's the LS1 system. And I think very highly of that system, but it appeared that it could even be improved by connecting it to this box instead of the other box I was using. And how can that be? Well, Ilko has been kind enough to explain to me that a digital system can only sound as good as its input. It can clean up the input to some extent, but it can't take away all the forms of jitter that are embedded in the clock that is being sent with the data to such a system. And that's the difference between this box and the previous one. It just sends out a much cleaner clocked signal to the digital speakers, and they sounded better. These are subtle differences, of course, but in my case I'm listening to the previous work I've done, and that's material that I'm very familiar with, and then these differences are very apparent, so I'm immediately noticing them. So that's what just made me jump in and get this box. And then later on, in using it for a while, I've been surprised that the added functionality that I originally didn't really pay that much attention to has been such a nice bonus. So there is a great sounding headphone amplifier, and it has an attenuation knob which allows you to really match the headphone level to the speaker level that you're using, and that makes switching between speakers and headphones much easier. So you can just carry on working at the same level once you've set the calibration. But by far my favorite feature is the iPut feature, which is maybe a weird name, but so let me explain. It's a USB connector on the front panel of the UC1, and it allows you to use the interface with two separate systems. So if you select the iPut input, the iPut input, if you select that in the menu, you can just have a second computer make use of all the functionality. So in my case, like many studios, I don't really want to have my email on the studio machine. So I'm having a laptop to do all communications, and the studio system is just for audio. But I get a lot of reference mixes or revisions via email or other means, and they end up in my laptop, and sometimes I just really want to quickly check them without having to put them on the studio system. So now I have this iPut, and it's just a flick of a button, and I can play back audio from my laptop on the studio system, on the main speakers, on the B pair speakers, and on the headphones. All at the same quality, so the box has also improved the quality of the B speaker D2A and also of the headphone D2A, so that's just a great added bonus.